So great to see everybody. I'm Mike Kim. This is Andy Storch. We're excited that you're joining us today. We got folks tuning in from everywhere, all over the United States and, of course, overseas. And we're super excited. You'll get to know us a little bit throughout the next hour, but we're going to dive right into the content. Andy, real quick, though, why don't you tell everybody where you are right now? You've been traveling a little bit.
Yeah, so I am, and I appreciate the comments in the chat, especially from my friends and community members there about the the beard. You can see the picture is the clean shaven look, but I've got my vacation beard going right now. I'm from Orlando, Florida, and moved my family last year to Barcelona, Spain. But we're back in the U.S. right now, actually back in Orlando, Florida, visiting family. So back in my hometown right now.
Yeah, this is about the closest I'll ever get to growing a beard. I am unable to grow facial hair. Andy and I are super excited to share with you guys today. Today we're calling the session "How Corporate Professionals Can Leverage the Power of Personal Branding." Both of us have experienced this in our own way, our own path, in our own careers. And Andy and I met a number of years ago, probably 6 or 7 years ago, and we just hit it off. And he had done a lot in the corporate space, in the professional space, and I had done a lot in the entrepreneurship and small business space. But one thing we always shared in common was this love for personal branding, the love for what it could do, not just for us, but for others. And we have seen how much it has changed the trajectory of our both professional and personal lives. So we're going to dive right into the training real quick. You will get the replay of this call. We will send you the slides, and we have an extra little bonus thing for LinkedIn, like a little template of different prompts and posts that you guys can use. And we're going to share a little bit of this as we go through the training. So if you guys are ready to go, just give us a quick yes in the chat so that I know that part is working. And what you want to do is make sure that your chat is addressed to everyone. All right, we're getting a lot of yeses. Andy, I'm going to kick it off. Let me know how many of you are familiar with this thing. Who's seen this thing before?
Taking me back, Mike.
Yeah, who has seen this thing? Okay, I'm getting a couple of lulls in the comments. All right, we're both in our 40s. Andy and I are both in our 40s, right? So this is AOL, America Online Instant Messenger. It has since been sunsetted, but this
Oh,
was the place to be when we were like in our teens and 20s. This was where everybody was hanging out. And Andy, I remember the first time that my friends had told me about Instant Messenger, and it seemed like it was the place to be.
yep.
And everyone was like, "Yo, are you online? Are you online?" And I was like, "Yo, this is the place to be. I've got to get online." So I booted up one of those CDs that AOL used to send out in the mail, CDs, guys, and we put them in the computer, and you fire up your modem using your telephone line. Jason knows, right? He said 100 free hours right there in the
That's
chat, right?
right.
You know the deal. And I was ready to get online. I was like, man, I'm going to be cool. I'm going to be with everybody. And dude, I was frozen like for about 30 minutes because when you boot it up and you get your account going, they ask you, what do you want as a screen name? And I was like, oh my gosh, what do I make my screen name? And I'm
Yep.
bringing up this story because that was the first time that I recall in my life going online, but then realizing that I had a particular identity online. And I wanted to look cool. I wanted to be memorable. I wanted to stand out. And of course, my name is really common. Like Kim is like Smith or Williams in Korean culture. So Mike Kim was taken. So I had to come up with a name. And after 30 minutes, I was like, okay, I think I'm good to go. I came up with this name. I was like, oh, it's going to be awesome. My friends are going to think it's cool. All the girls are going to like me. It's going to be clever, a play off of my name, and it's going to be epic. And the screen name I came up with
Which
was
pick?
Maikovich. Okay, so you guys can all laugh now. Just get it out of your system. Okay, this was my
Is that a nod to your Russian heritage
yeah.
there,
That's
Mike?
that's what everyone said. So all my friends were like, "Yo, what is with that name?" And they're like, "Greetings, Comrade Maikovich." And it really hurt because there's this girl I really liked, and she found out my screen name, and she goes, "Hey, I got a really good screen name for you." And sometimes people can be mean, so she was like, "Your screen name could be Michael Bitch." Dude, that hurt. Someone
That's
give me a
rough.
virtual hug today.
That's
That one
rough.
hurt. Yeah. Andy's was better, but he doesn't think it's like too much better. But Andy's was Astro Storch. Okay.
Yeah, I don't
How'd you
remember
come up with
exactly
that?
why I chose that. It just seemed like cool at the time watching the Jetsons and whatever else. Oh, let me get Astro Storch, and I don't think I got direct feedback on it, but I don't think this one earned me any dates back in
Yes.
high school either.
It all worked out for you. So you're in a good place in life now. But we share this story because, in all seriousness, a weird thing happens when we talk about ourselves online. And of course, the world is all online now. And when we talk about our professional careers, we see this now. It's a little bit difficult sometimes to navigate. But the principle of branding, as many of us know, comes from this idea or this practice of branding cattle, right? Like farmers and ranchers used to literally burn an identifying mark onto their cattle so that people knew who it belonged to. And as time passed, I did some research for this for my first book. This gentleman, Josiah Wedgwood, is often credited as the father of branding. He was born in the 1800s and entered a pottery competition for Queen Charlotte over in England, and he won the competition, and in a stroke of genius, he branded his pottery Queensware, and his company is still existent today. It's still around. Wedgwood Pottery is still around, and this guy was actually the progenitor. He was like the originator of things like money back guarantees and free delivery. So it wasn't Amazon, it was this guy, which is crazy. And when we think about branding, whether it's looking good online, coming up with a screen name or an IM name or an Instagram profile, or pottery or cattle, the idea of branding is all around identity. And we all want to look good. We all want to present ourselves in a way that allows us to play well and benefit, right, into the marketplace that we're going into. So, for the purposes of today, when we talk about personal branding, which is what today is going to be about, I want to just share a real quick definition. I've come up with this is that your personal brand is an identity, it's a public facing identity comprised of your ideas, your expertise, your reputation, and your personality. I know this phrase, personal brand, gets thrown around a lot, but for the purposes of today, let's agree that this is a public facing identity comprised of your ideas, your expertise, your reputation, and your personality. A real quick story years ago, I had a client and he was a speaker and an author, and he was traveling to go promote his latest book and went out to go to this conference. And he happened to sit next to a gentleman who was reading his book. He was reading his book, and my client thought to himself, wow, this is a great opportunity for me to ask someone who likes my stuff what they really think about the book. And of course, it turned out that the gentleman didn't recognize that he was sitting next to the author of the book he was reading. And of course, the gentleman was going to fly to the same conference that the author was speaking at. What a weird coincidence. And so he asked the guy, hey, what's this book about? And to his surprise, his reader gave him like the worst description of the book. He was like hemming
Mm.
and hawing, and he was like, hey, yeah, the book's really good. It's about this guy and like kind of some of the things he's going through in life and how it's taught him some lessons, but it's not really about the lessons. It's about enjoying the journey. And my client just looked at this guy. I was like, oh my gosh, this is not a great sales pitch for the book. And my client had a very interesting observation. He was like, you know what? It's actually my fault that my own readers don't know how to describe my work. And Andy, you're an author. You've written a
Yep.
book. We've got more coming on the way. What would you feel about this if you sat next to you travel a lot, you sat next to one of your readers and they were going to the same event, they didn't recognize you and they gave you a description of your book and it wasn't good? Like, how would you feel?
Yeah, it would be disappointing for sure. And it's a reminder that we certainly can't control what other people think about us or say about us, but we can be intentional and try to influence that. And it would be a wake up call that maybe haven't done enough to truly define what this is about, what the transformation is, or what they're supposed to be getting out of this, and making sure they're getting an impact so that they can speak more positively of this. I always try to take it back to ownership. Of course, it would be cool to see someone on a plane reading my book, which I don't think I've seen yet, but it would be disappointing if they couldn't really tell me much about it.
And how many of you who are here live have ever had someone describe you, whether it was at work or a networking event, and you're just like, wow, that was the worst introduction. You just did not set me up for success here. Anyone ever feel that way? Just throw it in the chat. Yes, if that's ever happened to you. Like you're trying to get in well with somebody or get a promotion and your supervisor and they just tee you up in the worst possible way. But yeah, we're getting a lot of yeses. We're getting it happens. Yeah. So that's what we want to talk a little bit about today, because not only do we have these in person impressions that we make, but the world is increasingly digital, as we know. And there's this element where branding, the everyday person has to learn a few things about shaping the narrative around them and shaping their identity. I clipped Andy's LinkedIn header here, and this is my Instagram header. And whether we know it or not, these things are speaking to people who meet us for the first time online. Andy's much more active on LinkedIn than I am. I'm a little bit more active on Instagram. But still, when you look at these snapshots, they actually say a lot, not just through the
Yeah.
words, but through the imagery. There's explicit communication and there's implicit communication. If you're taking notes today, I just want you to write those two words down. There's explicit communication, what you're saying directly, and then there's implicit communication. It's the shirt and the jacket Andy's wearing on the banner profile, but he doesn't have a tie. And on his profile picture, he's got a collared shirt, but it's not tied. And there's a sense that he's approachable and he's warm. And then you see in my Instagram, which I use a lot for business and on the marketing side of things, and you see some pictures of me speaking. You see a book there, and you figure maybe he's written a book, and you see a group of people and my assistant there, and I'm pigging out on the bottom center photo. And there's a sense where a lot of this is communicating more than we think. And the thing is, like, these days when people go into a job interview, they come in for a meeting, like there's a lot of explicit communication, there's a lot of implicit communication. And so when it comes to personal branding, I want to ask you, Andy, one of the things that you present a lot when you go and speak to teams, to companies, you ask a lot of folks as you guide them through this process of really establishing themselves. One of the key questions you ask is, hey, what do you want to be known for? Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. And before I do, can you go back 2 slides to the screenshots of our profiles? I want to remind people because I know we have a lot of corporate professionals on here. With a lot of people out there who think, yeah, LinkedIn's important, but it's not part of my job. I don't get to it that much. Ask yourself whenever you have a meeting coming up with somebody that you don't know, or you interact or come across somebody online that you haven't really interacted with before, you don't know what they do. What's the first thing that you do? For me, I go right to LinkedIn and look them up to see what does this person do? Who are they? What is their brand? And of course, I'm trying to find out their title, where do they work, what do they do? But they also have a lot of opportunity to define that with their brand. And we'll talk about LinkedIn later, but you can see how I've taken the initiative with that with my LinkedIn profile. Mike is very particular with what he puts on his Instagram page, that sort of thing. So we do have an opportunity. Again, we can't control what other people think about us, but we can certainly influence that with the brand that we're putting out there, with the message that we're putting out there. And we have to start somewhere, right? You may not even know what that needs to be yet, which is where we get to that question that Mike put up. What do you want to be known for? This is the question that I often start with when I'm working with people to help them figure out their personal brand. Because as Mike talked about, we all have a brand. Branding started many years ago with companies, but we all have a personal brand. We all have a reputation. And so my philosophy on it is that we might as well be intentional about it. And that starts with asking this question: what do you want to be known for? Obviously, we come into our situation today with lots of background and experience where we grew up, our family, where we've worked, the experience and expertise that we've developed in the workplace. But you think about your job and where you work and the company and the teams that you work with. What do you want to be known for? Do you want to be known as someone who is honest and hardworking, who's high integrity? Do you want to be known as a team player? Do you want to be known as an expert in a certain field? Do you want to be known as fun, someone who's like easygoing and great to work with? There's lots of things. And I think it's important to start to think about what are those maybe 3 to 5 attributes that are really important to you when I ask you, hey, what are the adjectives? What are the attributes that you want to be known for at work and maybe beyond work, right? Out there in the marketplace, in the online world, what do you want to be known for? And you have an opportunity to start defining that, but it starts with this question.
I think it would be fun if we shared a little bit here in the chat as much as you all feel comfortable. Maybe you don't have three things off the top of your head, but at least one thing that you want to be known for. I'll get the ball rolling here. Andy, I always wanted to be known as somebody who could make difficult things simple. Like I wanted to be a simplifier. I heard somebody early in my career talk about how I could add value to the people I worked with, the companies and organizations I worked at. My last position was as the chief marketing officer for a growing educational company here in the New Jersey, New York City area. And one of the things that we really struggled with on marketing was that it was getting so complex. And I had a mentor tell me, "Hey Mike, listen, there's two ways that you can really be of value as a marketer in your company. Either be a simplifier or be a multiplier." And dude, I love that. Just be one or the other. What
Mhm.
do you gravitate towards? And he knew me pretty well. He's like, you just have a way of making things easy to understand. You're simple, you're not convoluted. You can take big concepts and make it really easy to understand for people. And he's like, if you just double down on that, you'll just get you'll just become known as somebody who makes things efficient, simple, clean, easy to understand. That's the route I went. And there are other folks who are just multipliers. They could generate more sales, they could get more leads, they could grow a team. And I really started to find my lane there. We're having some of the comments come in. Michelle mentioned, I want to be known as a person who brings order out of chaos, a pattern seeker. I love that. I love that
Mm.
pattern seeker. Lynn said, I want to be known as someone who creates clarity. Clarity, provide inspiration, a safe space to talk. I know Lynn, and Lynn served for 40 years working at John Deere. He's out in Illinois, and he retired and he's very heralded at work. I want to go inspire more people in their encore career. That's so cool.
My friend, if I could jump in, Mike, my
Yeah.
friend, Dr. Michelle Robertson wrote in there, similar to you, wants to often describe herself as someone who could make complex things simple in anything, wants to be known as an expert in employee engagement, strategic planning, retention challenges, whatever. Just make it simple. And I want to mention, we're going to mention at the end a conference that we're doing that I'm hosting at the end of the year. Dr. Michelle is one of our featured speakers at that
Amazing.
conference, and she is going to take some important concepts and make them simple for people. And I'll just share mine and then we can go down as people put theirs in the chat because I've thought a lot about this and I really want to be known as someone who is generous, who is helpful, who people can come to and they're going to get help from me, whether that's just helping a friend, being supportive of people in my network, or obviously clients coming and paying me for my time and my expertise. I also want to be known as someone who's inspiring. And so people want to come to me to learn and be inspired. I had a client, I ran a session for a company and I had a client say that he wants to be known as someone who gets things done. And I thought that was really cool because that shows how he provides the value inside his organization and shows how we're different because I don't necessarily want to be known as that because to me, that sounds like I'm going to attract more work. And maybe I'm just lazy. I don't want to attract too much work. But for him, that was really important. So I think it's important that we think about what do we, not what other people want, but what do we want to be known for?
Yeah. And it's part of taking back the narratives. I think people define us when we're starting out, but we realize now, especially through what we can do online and the way we set our course, we can shape it. Andy, one of the things that you dovetail around first starting with this idea of personal branding, and then second, what do you want to be known for? Third is like, what's the purpose behind it, right? This
Mm,
branding stuff is extra work. It is an investment of time and energy and mental headspace, right? Just brain power to be intentional about charting a certain course and not something that we do just for the sake of it, right? It's because we want to take back control. We want to own our career. We have a saying, if you own your brand, then you can own your career. And if you own your career, then you can own your life. Andy, can you share a little bit about finding purpose? I know that this is something that comes up a lot with your
yeah.
clients when you consult with them.
I, this is coming up more and more with corporate clients as well, which is really cool to hear and interesting. Before I get to that, just to address some of the comments, Nick Elkins, a friend of mine, said, I want to be known as the guy who could do more push ups than Andy Storch. That's something to be known for. Nick and I have been friends for many years, and we used to do push up contests even remotely and at conferences. And I used to post a lot about that. Jeanette chimed in and said, who we both know, said, me too. But I used to post about push-ups in the gym and stuff like that. And I became known for that as someone who's big into health and fitness and working out. It's not that hard to go and define that and build that personal brand, which I know you're an expert on, Mike, and we're going to talk more about. I think it's also important, like you said, to connect that back as much as you can to a purpose. And this really just comes down to the question, why? So we asked you, what do you want to be known for? Mike and I shared what we want to be known for. The next question is, why do you want to be known for that? Why do you want to be known as an expert in your field? Why do you want to be known as someone who is a good listener and tailors your approach to helping and coaching other people, like Emma put into the chat there, or someone who gets it done or does more push-ups than somebody else? Like, why? What's the real reason behind that? Your motivation behind that? And that's going to connect back to a greater purpose. And your purpose doesn't have to be world changing or broad. It doesn't have to be like, I'm going to solve world peace or a world hunger, or I'm going to change the world. It can be, I want to make a earn respect by making a contribution and move up to a senior position. I want to provide for my family and live a great life and travel the world. What are the reasons behind what you want to do? And it can connect to your career goals, where you want to go, as well as to that personal brand and what you want to be known for. And the key here, the important thing here is that as you are working on your goals, as you're defining your brand, things are going to get hard. Your challenges are going to come up, right? And that why is what helps you get past those challenges, help you keep working on it, answers that question, why did I decide to do this again? Why did I decide to define this brand again? And gives you that kind of North Star, that thing to come back to, and helps you really connect your purpose to your goals, to your job, to your career. And it's a bonus too. If you work for a bigger company, can you connect that to the company's purpose or mission, right? It doesn't always work out that way, but it's nice if it does, because, hey, if I do my job well and I get things done here, I help my company achieve X and I care about that.
Yeah.
And so that's going to help you make more progress on your goals and achieve more success as well.
I love that idea of the connection piece because, again, it helps you get through what a lot of people refer to as the messy middle. We take a new role, we're really excited about it. We're like, okay, we're going to get a pay raise, or we're going to have a little bit more leadership or influence in the company, and we're excited about it. And then comes the messy middle, right? It's like your third month in, you're just like, wait, okay, now I get the office culture, I get what it's like. I remember that in the roles that I was in various roles. I'm like, oh, okay, the honeymoon period is over. Now we got to connect this. And I think, Andy, one of the things is that, like, my purpose when I was working was very different in my late teens and early 20s, coming out of college, heading into my late 20s, into my 30s, mid 30s, late 30s, and now here in my mid 40s. I think that a lot of people think, and I believe this when I came out of college, that I had to know everything I wanted to do when I went out into the workforce. And looking back, they always say hindsight is 2020, right? You're
Mhm.
just like, gosh, man, I needed to try a lot more things. I realized that I'm somebody who's very experiential. I need to try things in order to see whether I like them or not. People would ask me ad nauseum, hey, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? I'm like, I'm not sure, but I'm going to try a lot of things to find out if I don't want to do them. And then you have a family, you've got kids, you've got a lot of
Yeah.
responsibilities. And I just love that you've always connected your work, whatever it's looked like, to that purpose. Can you share a little bit about your career path during school, coming out of college? I know when you were a kid, you wanted to be a baseball player, but so did I. That's another thing we share. But
Yeah.
can you give people a little bit of a snapshot of your journey and how this, knowing your why, has kept you on track?
Yeah, absolutely. This evolves over time, right? When I was in my 20s, my biggest vision or goal after I realized I'm not going to be a professional athlete was to move up the ladder somewhere and be a company CEO or run a big company, maybe get into politics one day. And I think a lot of that was about, if you really dig deep on your ambitions and ask like the why questions. Some people even talk about the five whys. After you answer a question, ask why again, then ask why again. A lot of it was about recognition. It was about ego, about prestige. And there's nothing wrong with that, by the way, but I think it's important to get honest with ourselves about what we really want and what's driving this. And so it was a lot about that, the money, prestige, ego, moving up. Things change over time. And I realized, like, hey, there's a lot of things I want to do in life. And as I learned in my 30s, I have an opportunity to really make an impact with others too. So maybe I want to move towards something that's more of a lifestyle type business that kind of, so I realized too that I really want to be an entrepreneur. So can I build a business around my strengths and the things that I love to do, which is helping others? And then as I have a family as well, I have two kids, a wife and two kids. That's really important to me. And it's actually more important to me that I'm supporting them, that I'm spending time with them, than it is to maybe run a big company or move up the ladder somewhere. And so my purpose, the first part of my purpose is to love and support my family. That's always the most important thing. Following that is to continue to grow and improve because I want to be known as someone who is always learning, always growing, and never have it all figured out. I think that's something that will serve all of us very well. And the last part is to make an impact on the world, right? And I want to continue to do things to grow and make an impact on the world. But first and foremost, I don't want to make sacrifices. There's always trade-offs and sacrifices everywhere, but that are not going to support my family. And there's no right or wrong. Owning your career, which I talk about in my keynote to my first book, Own Your Career, Own Your Life, is about defining what you want your career and life to look like for you. It's very personal for you, not what other people want. And I think a lot of times we get caught up setting goals based on what we see other people are doing or what other people want, right? It's really getting clear on what do I want out of my career? What do I want out of my life? What do I want my brand to stand for? What's driving me? What's my purpose? And knowing that probably will evolve over time, which is totally fine. And just checking in with that on a regular basis.
Yeah, I love that. I'm seeing a lot of comments here in the chat as well. Emma just said, as someone who used to be an academic advisor for college students, many of them felt like they had to have everything figured out on day one. It's definitely a myth. And that's what Emma said. And I think that as I've moved through different seasons of life, I've wanted different things to become more important. I don't have this on the slide deck, but this is a quote that someone you and I know, Andy, Susie Miller, who does a lot of coaching for executives and leaders in the corporate world, and even some entrepreneurs. I met Susie a number of years ago, and she talked about how work life balance is a myth. This idea that
Hmm.
you sleep 8 hours, you work 8 hours, and 8 hours you do your own thing. And she gave me this quote I've lived by since. She said, "It's not about work life balance, it's about harmony." And what that means is just like when you go to a concert, like to a symphony to hear an orchestra play, it's the appropriate amount of attention to the appropriate thing for the appropriate amount of time. And I'll say that again, the appropriate amount of attention to the appropriate thing for the appropriate amount of time. We don't go to a concert and hear the violins blaring the entire piece. It's the appropriate amount of attention. The violins have a solo to the appropriate thing, the violins, for an appropriate amount of time, not the entire thing. And so you, as you've stepped into family life, this is the appropriate amount of attention to the appropriate thing for the appropriate amount of time. But when the kids are grown, you guys are empty nesters. You might be living like Lynn, who I mentioned earlier. He's retired and he wants to go do some consulting and speaking. He's already doing that, and there's a purpose behind that. It keeps
Hmm.
me young. I love learning. I love being around new people. How many of you feel right now in the chat that you want to shift gears with your career? Not quite sure where to go, but you feel like there's a transition brewing, maybe in the next, let's say, 18 to 36 months, right? Anyone feel like that in the chat? Like you sense something, right? So Jim, you said yes for sure.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Mhm.
I feel like it's important to mention too. We mentioned transitions, we mentioned challenges, we mentioned that things change over time. To recognize that that is going to be the case as well. Things are going to come up. You mentioned Susie Miller. She's been through some serious health challenges on her journey, and she's open and public about that and uses that as motivation, I think, to help others. A lot of people that follow me know I went through cancer a few years ago and shared that publicly and went through some hard times. I think Susie's journey was even much harder than what I went through. Mike, you were open about going through divorce and challenges that came with that. And so stuff is going to come up, and the purpose is what's going to keep driving us forward. And it may evolve over time based on how our life changes, and that's okay. So it's great if you're hitting on upon a transition. That's good. And let us help you figure that out.
Yeah, and I feel like the changes haven't stopped. Like there are going to be more, right? There are going to be more turns around the corner. One of the exercises that Andy and I and a lot of our clients have found really helpful, especially in navigating those changes, is to identify your unique expertise and using these principles of personal branding to point your career in a different direction. So I'm going to share a little bit from my journey here. And this is just something that surprised me in how effective it's been. So, what you do is you jot down a short list of things that you've done in your roles, especially things that are not in your job description, right? When I was working in my last position as the chief marketing officer of this company, sure, I had to deal with marketing and I had to do all these things, but there were a lot of things outside of the job description that I found myself doing on a day-to-day basis, Andy, like coaching, like mentoring people, like
Hmm.
having those talks by the water cooler. If I could sum up a couple of things during my career path, and we chose mine as an example because mine was way more erratic than Andy's. But for me in the past, I was the music director of a church, a large church in Hartford, Connecticut. I tutored high school students, helping them supplement their learning at school, their GPA, and even their college entrance exams. And when I was in my 20s, I did telemarketing sales. And I'll be really honest here, I was embarrassed to use LinkedIn. Like, there was a time where I was like, "Man, my link if I, like, post on LinkedIn, it's, like, all over the place." I felt, like, a little weird about it. And so, I did this exercise one day where I just wrote down everything that I just shared with you guys, right? And I really tried to get granular. So, these are just a couple of the things I did. My list was much longer, but it looked something like this. I taught high schoolers, but I also wrote teaching curriculums. Even though I was the music director at the church, I spoke once in a while. There, I also had to lead volunteers. We didn't pay any of the musicians. I had to recruit them. So I had to do a lot. I learned a lot of interpersonal skills like through that role, which I never really thought of until I got older. We had recorded some music albums, which I was in charge of marketing. I hosted a couple of conferences, so I was up on stage a lot. I was hiring speakers. I was dealing with the audio visuals in the room. I was getting tickets. Like, I was learning a lot of stuff. And then, of course, in my telemarketing job, I sold a cleaning product on the phone. Funny story about that. I did pretty well at it, Andy, and I would use my name, Michael Kim.
Mhm.
And we were calling all these different factories. It was an industrial cleaning agent. And so they all lived out in like Iowa, Illinois, like the Rust Belt, and they didn't know what Kim was. Everyone thought my name was Michael King, King. So I just started going with it because it was too
Go with
hard
it.
to
Go with
just
it.
went with it. But the light bulb went off when I looked at a list very similar to this, and then I just crossed off everything that was at the end of it. And this guy's was like very illuminating to me for some reason. Because I think I thought of my worth and my skill set and my expertise through the job title I had instead of the things I actually did on a day-to-day basis. And so I realized, wow, I teach, I write, I speak, I recruit and I lead, I market, I host events, I sell. And I was able to, in a good way, separate myself from the role and the job and the responsibilities and just look at Mike and see what that dude, what that guy, what I had as skill sets and experiences to offer. Right? Andy, I know that you have gone through some career pivots and so on and so forth, but how did you navigate that? I know you've done certain things like this as well. Would you share a little
Yeah.
bit about what that
What's
is?
funny, one realization I had after I went through my own journey and lots of self-reflection to really figure out, hey, what are my strengths? What do I want to build a business around? I used to work in companies. I worked in like analyst roles and insurance and consulting. And I was the guy who was always organizing lunches and happy hour and getting people together. And for me, it was just like this strong drive to do it. I didn't see it as any benefit at work. And in fact, I think in many cases it held me back because I was too busy socializing and not getting my work done. It really did hold me back in a lot of jobs, caused me to not, get as much work done, not get promoted. And I almost felt like it was this weakness that I had that I couldn't stop being social. And it's funny to think about that now, but what I've done is I've recognized my strengths and what I do. So it was same kind of exercise as this, but maybe it's not in the job description, but hey, I organize happy hours. That's cool. How can you fit that more into something that's valuable in your brand, your career? Now I run a business as a speaker and trainer. I host a conference. I organize gatherings of people. I've hosted virtual summits. Like I've made it a business to bring people together because it's something that I'm good at and I enjoy, something that was just fun in the beginning. And I think a lot of people have things like that. We're like, oh, I have this hobby on the side. And some things will always just be hobbies. You can't necessarily turn them into a business or a job. Like you love painting, it may not ever turn into something professional. But there are things we do that you're like, okay, yeah, I put up with the job, but there's these things that I love doing that I do on the side or I do for my colleagues and help them with. Maybe there's a way to build that more into your brand and to your career and the work you do if you start to really think about what you love doing and what you're really good at.
Yeah, and we really want to encourage you guys to do this very simple exercise. It'll take all of 5 or 10 minutes, but the light bulb that goes off, like that could potentially go off in your mind, right? No Kahanya just mentioned in the chat, just wrote 6 light bulbs, right? Like just, whoa, okay, that just, wow, I didn't see myself in that way. And as a guy who works in marketing branding, in this context, I would say that branding yourself, especially if you want to shift your trajectory career wise, is just as much about changing the story you tell yourself as it is in changing the story you tell the public. Andy mentioned before he'd share a little publicly about how he was working out and what he was eating, and he got known for that. And
Yep.
it doesn't take much. It just takes a little bit of intention and consistency. One of the quotes that we all live by, I don't have it on the slide deck here, is that consistency is greater than intensity, right? Consistency is greater than intensity. And as we move into the session here about amplifying your ideas, your expertise, your reputation, your personality, one of the things that we would say here is just be consistent with it, be authentic with it. I pulled a couple of screen captures from Andy's LinkedIn because I think he just exemplifies this so well. Andy, real quick, as we look at this, how long have you been active on LinkedIn? How like you've been on there forever. How long would you
Yeah,
say?
I actually looked back the other day because you can download all of your connections, your data from LinkedIn. I did that recently, and I think that my first connection was in 2006. I think something like that with some of my classmates in business school where I was at the time. But I think I started getting really active and networking on there when I was in consulting, starting back in like 2011, 2012. But I really started sharing content to build a brand in 18 onward. So it's been about 6 years. And the interesting thing about my journey there is I've never had anything really take off or go crazy viral. I've never been a sensation. I'm not one of those people that like, look, I have 100,000 followers because I just did these three things. It really has just been consistently showing up, connecting with people, posting content, sharing content, adding value, looking to help others. And it's just slowly grown over time as I've built the LinkedIn following and more importantly, my network, which has grown to include clients. I've made a lot of great friends on the platform because it's not just about getting a job or getting business. Like I've made great friends there as well. There's a lot of benefits to doing that. And it's helped me define the brand, which comes down to, hey, what am I talking about on a regular basis? Am I talking about career development? I'm talking about talent development. These are things I want to be known for. And you mentioned consistency, it's just showing up over time. I often joke, you mentioned the fitness thing. It doesn't take that much to define who you are online. I used to, in a previous house and home office, I had my bike behind me, actually in my home office. Now I'm not in my home office today because I'm traveling, as we said, but I usually have my bike behind me and people will come up to me or they'll talk to me and be like, "Oh, I know you're a cyclist because I always see your bike in your Zoom window." And I just think of that often as an example of like how little things can help define your brand and what you're known for, just like how you're showing up and what do people see and associate with you. And I am a
Yeah,
cyclist, by the way. I love it.
I and what I see here is that I'll just mouse over this stuff. Like you're Andy's sharing here skills of the future, talent development. That's the first thing I see. Those are the things that are jumping out at me. Career. He's using some of these words over and over again. And what this tells me is that Andy can dress up, he can clean up. Nice job, buddy. You look good here. But he can
Thank you.
also be very casual, dressed down. He's talking with people. I pulled a few more pictures here. And he just the valuable currency isn't just how much we know, but how well we learn. You're seeing these books on his shelf. He's got the cover of his own book back here.
Yeah,
There's
there's
a
the
lot to
official
be said here.
background, by the way.
Yeah, that's the official background. But he's also not afraid to post personal pictures. Like here they all are traveling out in Montana. This is just a week ago. Katrina and Lauren are friends of mine as well. And it's just, you've been able to have this unique blend between the professional and the personal because we are all one person. It's not just one side of things. I'm going to dive into a little bit of content stuff here. And if y'all have any questions around some of this, absolutely just throw it in the chat. If there's something that we can be more specific on, one of the general guiding rules that I encourage my clients to follow is the 80% rule. And what I mean by that is when you're sharing consistently online, whether it's LinkedIn, some other platform, or the things that you're talking about at work with your colleagues, make sure that try to use this. It's not a hard and fast law, but 80% of your content should speak to 80% of your audience 80% of the time. Right. So when I looked at Andy's content on his LinkedIn profile, I would absolutely say 80% of the stuff he talks about is about career development, talent development, personal development, and growth. And then he's got a post once in a while that shows this more human side of him. He clearly loves to travel. There's a vacation beard come into play, bro. There it is, right? It's
That's
just
right.
starting out. And it's just a helpful guide. It's not a hard and fast rule, but what we've done is we've clipped a couple of these prompts that you can use to start getting the gears turning in terms of what you might want to share and talk about. So I'm not going to read these for the sake of time, but broad topics like industry trends and insights, the future of remote work, right? DEI best practices we have adopted. Maybe there's challenges and solutions in employee retention that you could share. Here in the professional growth, like 5 books every whatever industry you're in, professionals should read this year. So 5 books every marketing professional should read, or HR professional should read, or talent development professional should read, and on we go. Right? We got a lot more here: polls and questions, resource sharing, personal development, quotes and inspiration, right? And you saw Andy use one of those in that interview podcast post, a quote that came from the interview, right? Now, I know I'm moving really fast through this part, but don't worry. We're going to get this to you in the replay. So you don't have to scramble to get all of this stuff like screenshotted or anything. But in this little guide, we even have like these entire posts written out that you can use as a template, whether it's on LinkedIn or anywhere else. This is a statistic based post. We have about 4 more of these. And if you'd like to grab this, just keep an eye on your email inbox as I send out the replay to today's session. I'm going to have this whole thing. This is another slide here. There's another template here, a story or personal anecdote, right? And this is about a mentor. I wrote something like this to my newsletter list about a mentor that I had at work. And so you can take this with my permission and take it and tweak it to your own use, right? So again, we got this is like an 8-page document, all these little prompts that you can use to start sharing. What do we say a personal brand is? Ideas, expertise, reputation, personality. And these prompts are going to help pull out your ideas, showcase your expertise, right? And even show a little bit of your personality in the way that you write, right? Andy and I, we write pretty similar, but I think what's interesting about the way that we both communicate is that we're pretty down to earth people. And even though he's done a lot more in the corporate space than I have, we write in a similar way. And so we talk like we write, right? And a lot of this hopefully will help you guys, and we will absolutely send this out to you.
And I know a
Yeah,
lot
go
of
ahead,
people
Andy.
here follow you, Mike, but for those that don't, yeah, I share a lot of stuff. I just see myself as a guy sharing my journey and my expertise out there. But Mike is a master copywriter, and he's really built a lot of his career on that. So to get this content from him is great. And obviously, you don't just copy and paste, right? You take it as inspiration and then you make it your own. You put it in your own voice, right? You talk how you talk and you talk about the things that you want to talk about. But it's always helpful to have something to just get you started. I use these things all the time and it's really helpful.
Yeah. We hope that you guys have found some value in the things that we were able to share today. And what I want to do here right now is I want to transition a little bit into what Andy let us know about at the top of the hour, that he is hosting a conference later this fall in November in Orlando. It's the Talent Development Think Tank Conference, November 6th and 7th in Orlando, Florida. I will be there. I'm super amped to be there. Andy invited me to come, and we haven't seen each other in person in a little while, maybe in about a year. So I'm excited to see him and just be with the rest of the crew. But Andy, why don't you take it from here? Let everybody know a little bit about the event. I can showcase the speakers if y'all want to know who it's for. But Andy, this is
Yeah.
your event. Tell us about it.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. And excited to be talking with all of you. This conference, I think, first and foremost, is just a testament to building a personal brand, right? Who am I to host a conference? I'm just a guy who's been building a network on LinkedIn over the years, putting content out there, and realized I have, again, a strength in bringing people together, connecting people. So let's try and leverage that and leverage the brand to put something out there that I believe is different from everything else. It started because I was going to other conferences to meet people, to meet clients, to learn things. And I just found them all to be so boring. Really, like a bunch of speakers with PowerPoint presentations. You've all heard of death by PowerPoint, you've experienced it. And a lot of the speakers are experts, but they're not the kind of people that need to be on stage because it's not just expertise, but there's a skill to speaking as well. So I decided to create something different. The first one was with my friend Bennett Phillips, who's down in the bottom left there. We did the first one together. He went off into a kind of a different business, and I've taken it over since then. We had hosted the conference again last year. Huge success, lots of great people there. And we're bringing it back this November 6th and 7th in Orlando. We've got some fantastic speakers and facilitators there. Dr. Michelle Robertson, who's been on here and she's in the chat there, is one of our featured speakers. Claude Silver, who is the chief heart officer of VaynerMedia. She's basically Gary Vee's number two. For any of you that follow Gary, she is just as inspirational, if not more. She's amazing. And I can't wait to have her back on our stage. She was there last year. You also notice that we bring a very diverse group of people together. We have LGBTQ represented. We have people of color. We have probably more women than men speaking. I'm very proud of that. And most importantly, I'm proud of the fact that most of our sessions are interactive so that people can learn more from each other or as much from each other as they do from the speakers on stage. Matt Prosco in the chat is one of our sponsors and speakers. He's going to be there as well. And it's just going to be a really great group of people. And I know some of you don't necessarily work in talent development, but if you care about developing people, it's going to be a great group of people to interact with and network with, to learn from. And we also are going to have some sessions on building your personal brand. Our friend Lauren Davis, who you saw us vacationing with in Montana, is an expert on personal brand coaching, as well as helping speakers build their expertise as thought leaders and speakers and presentations. She's going to be running a session there, as well as running our social media for the third time. Mike and I are going to be there doing a session on owning your brand. In fact, we're going to have a whole workshop on day 3, which is an optional day. You can pay extra to come to day 3 and attend our workshop on owning your brand. It's really going to be a phenomenal. People who come tell me it's the best conference they've ever been to. And I think it's because we really focus on interacting, building relationships with each other. And the tickets are available now. We're limiting it to 150 people total. After that, it's sold out. No one else is coming. We do still have tickets available, but I know a lot of people are going to start buying tickets in the next probably month or so, because they usually wait until that 2-month mark, I've found. And we do have a discount available for people in this group. So the regular ticket price is $13.95. You want to grab the all access pass so you can come to that third day, though, which is $17.95. I know it's more than some of the other maybe entrepreneur focused conference out there that you may have seen, but in the corporate space, I feel like it's very fair, especially because we do have meals given for you, amazing speakers. And just for you who are on this webinar today and in our replay, I've created a special discount code for $300 off that rate. You can use the code Own Your Brand. Just go to the website, and when you click that grab your ticket, you put in the code Own Your Brand. You're going to get $300 off. So we're going to reduce that ticket price. You're going to get 3 days with that middle option there of tons of great sessions, amazing speakers and facilitators, lots of great networking. You get to hang out with me and Mike because we're going to be there hanging out the entire time. It's really going to be a phenomenal experience. And of course, you can reach out to me if you have any questions. I will put my email in the chat as well. And I hope to see some of you there.
Yeah. Also, Andy has thought of everything. He even has a template that you can use and tweak to request your company to pay for your ticket to the event. He's got that right on the website, but I'm going to put all the links in the replay for today's call. We'd love to see you guys there. Again, Talent Development Think Tank, November 6th and 7th. And we have a few extra minutes. Jason, all right, we got a recommendation from Jason right in the chat already.
Jason was there last year. I know he's coming back this year. It's worth it just to come network with Jason. I'm telling you, he is a fun, good guy.
Amazing, amazing. We have a few minutes here, and one of the things I'd love to do, especially when there's a learning opportunity, is those of you who are here, maybe share one takeaway that you had from today's presentation. Was there something that was like a light bulb moment for you? Something that maybe stuck with you and inspired you in some way? We'd love to know, especially as we continue to march towards the conference, and Andy and I will be tweaking a lot of the things that we'll be teaching and working on. But what kind of has jumped out? So Jerry said, need advice on creating a powerful LinkedIn profile. Absolutely. We're gonna dive deeper in that. And I encourage you to stay subscribed to our email list. You're on our email list because you're here on this presentation. We're going to be sending out tips over the next couple of weeks, just value add, just to try to go deeper on some of these topics. So thank you, Jerry, for sharing that. Matt said, am I a simplifier or a multiplier? Jimmy, consistency is greater than intensity. Andy, I'm just reading some of these off here. They're flying now. How you tied your professional experience to your personal passions and strengths. Tim said that. Andy, you've done that so well. Lynn, my reader couldn't describe my book for me. Yeah, the big one. Narrow the focus of who I am. Thank you for sharing that, Leslie. Jeanette said the appropriate amount of attention to the appropriate thing for the appropriate amount of time. Isn't that good? Man, that's good.
Yeah.
That one's always helped me. Ellen said the things that you do outside your job description, definitely light bulb moments. I know Ellen. I've known her for a couple of years now. She did a lot of work at some of these major companies. I don't want to say publicly because that's not my story to tell, but she has developed some incredible mentorship programs. These are all companies that we would all know about. And she's still doing a lot of work in that space. So that's really cool to see. Ellen, you're full of skills and abilities and talents, right? Karen said, loved creating the short list. Kristen said, getting clarity on who and what I want to be known for online. So that's spectacular. Nokia Anya said the listing the things you've done. Yeah, absolutely. You're the one who posted all the light bulbs. America said, marketing yourself as much about the story you tell yourself as you tell others. Yeah, so good. Yeah, so that it looks like that one exercise, Wade said it too. Love the exercise on how to identify your unique expertise. You and I are always like surprised at how much clarity that brings to people when they just do that. So
Yep.
we absolutely want to encourage you guys to dig into that. And Andy just put his LinkedIn link into the chat. I don't have it on me right now. I don't have mine on me, but I'm at linkedin.com/in/Mike Kim TV. But again, we'll put all the links in the email as we send out the replay here. Andy, Nancy had a question for the conference real quick. Any idea on some of the breakout session topics?
Yeah, we are just finalizing that now. We have all our speakers and facilitators set. I know we have some sessions on leadership development, how to develop great leaders, what leaders are looking for, how to create great leaders, which I think goes, beyond talent development. If you work in the organizations, you work with others. My friend Al D is coming and he is going to be sharing the latest trends in talent development and workplace skills. He is someone I look to who really studies that stuff and just knows what's going on. I'm so excited about that. Of course, we got Claude Silver, who's going to be talking probably about empathy and inclusion and how you can marry that with business. She's just absolutely phenomenal. I know Dr. Michelle will be simplifying some things and talking about how to not only strategize, but really include and involve our people and make them feel like they're included and they're cared about. It's such a great, we've got a session on culture. We've got some sessions on other creating great sessions. We've got some stuff on personal brand. I got to go back to the list, but I know we have a lot of great sessions all around the topic of personal development, personal brand, or sorry, talent development, but we have the personal brand stuff. My friend Sarah Canistre was there last year, is an expert on career development and finding your next career, especially in talent development, but it's all applies broadly to any field that you're in. That's going to be phenomenal as well. And there's just more great sessions that we're going to have. And they're all, for the most part, interactive, which means you get to learn from others as well as the speaker, and you really get to take what you need away from the session, not exactly what they tell you need to take away.
Yeah, I love that. And I would close with this. I've seen this play out not just on the professional side of life, but just life itself, right? One of the things I say is that relationships are rocket ships. And while our world has become increasingly virtual, there just is nothing like getting together in person, getting together with a community of people who want to move forward, who want to think bigger, who want to grow themselves. Ellen just mentioned in the chat, she's interested in Andy's think tank community. I think community is where it's at. So come out to Orlando, hang with us. We want to see you there. It's going to be an amazing time, and relationships are rocket ships, right? And so let's,
They're really a
yeah,
community relationships are so important. I see that as the number one thing you get out of these events. And I just want to brag for a second. We have Dr. Michelle here, we had Jason here, we had America here, who were at our conference last year. Both days of the conference, we ended at 5:30. We had dinner one day. People did not leave. They hung out, drinking wine, talking with each other, sharing stories until we basically got kicked out of the venue by the hotel. It was one of the greatest things about the conference, and so many people left friends, and I love being able to create a space for that. And Dr. Michelle, of course, you all need to know Dr. Michelle. You need to follow her. She's like the queen. She was the one who was unofficially bringing everybody together for like, she had the funnest stable every night, of course. But that's why we come to these events. I hope you learn things from the speakers, but I think the lasting memory and legacy is the connections you make, the friends you make, the people that you can continue to learn from. That's what we're going to create at this conference and all of our future events. And of course, we're so happy that all of you here are learning from us today. You stay on our email list. You'll be the first to know about our book when it comes out in a few months as well. And we'll be continuing to share the things that we're learning that can help you grow your career, grow your brand, and achieve more success in the future.
absolutely. Guys, thank you so much, all to everybody just here and watching on the replay. Thank you, Andy, for making time. I know you're on vacation, so super appreciated. Get back to biking and all the things that you got to do. And the rest of y'all here who are on the call and watching on the replay, we'll stay in touch. Keep an eye out on your inbox for the replay and all the other goodies. And hopefully we'll see you in Orlando, and we will be in touch. So keep an eye on your inbox, and we'll connect with you on LinkedIn. We'll see you online and hopefully in real life in a couple months. Okay. Goodbye, everybody.
Thanks,
Have
Mike.
a
Thanks,
great day.
everybody.